Timmy. Hi, I'm Tammy. This is Popo. She's 92 years old. She was a teenager when the war happened. Popo, you are in the papers. 你上报了，你上报了, Popo.
Wow, Popo, that's so cool. The house that you used to live in during World War II is now the building for a Singapore visitor center that tells tourists where they can visit when they're in Singapore.
是的，那边有一排屋，现在只剩下一栋，可是我就住在那一间。那个时候，2楼住了7个家庭。
So you lived on the second story with 6 other families. How was the war like? And how did you study with so many people in the house?
二战时候只有日本学校，我们不想读日本文，所以没上学。
Oh, you didn't want to go to school because there were only Japanese schools around. Oh, Popo, so you were 14 years old then? It must have been tough living through the war. Tell me more, Popo.
这个你拿去看看，阿公收了很多二战的东西。
I remember Agong telling us that the Japanese gave them these to use during the Japanese occupation in Singapore. Agong used to tell us a lot of stories about the war when we were much younger. So, what do you know about the war? What is a war?
I know a war is when different groups or countries fight against each other. What else happens during a war?
Well, we have 2 words here. How many of you think hunger happens during a war? Raise your hands. Yes, you are right. During a war, shops may be destroyed. And if the war lasts a long time, the country may run out of food for its people.
What about fear? Would you be very scared? I know I would be if there was fighting around me every day and I don't know when the next air raid will be. Me and my family will be careful to hide to make sure we do not get injured. I know I'll be very scared and confused. Popo, do you remember much about the war?
记得很清楚，那个除夕晚上，天上很红，很多过山炮，我们躲在防火巷里吃饼干，没煮饭。后来大年初一早上听到人家说几排旗了，几排旗了。
On the eve of Chinese New Year, the sky was red with heavy artillery fire, and your reunion dinner was spent in a bomb shelter eating biscuit. And on the first day of Lunar New Year, the British surrendered. But Popo, how? The British, how did they lose? They were protecting Singapore.
Look, it's Agong's notes. On 8th December 1941, the Japanese dropped their first bomb in Singapore. The Japanese had actually sent over 60 bombers, but only 17 arrived due to bad weather and it was difficult to see at night.
So, the British didn't know the Japanese were coming?
Actually, the British did. Almost an hour before the attack. The radar station at Mersin, Malaya detected the attack, but the request to intercept the Japanese bombers was denied. That was because the British commanders were afraid that they would shoot down their own planes by mistake because it was nighttime. Then, the bombs fell on areas like Chinatown and Raffles Place and killed 61 people.
Oh no! What about their naval defense? Their big ships?
Next, the British were shocked when the Japanese sank the British warships HMS Prince of Wales and HMS Repulse on 10th December 1941. the ships were meant to protect Singapore. In the weeks that followed, the British turned off all the lights at night, so that the Japanese bombers couldn't spot any buildings to bomb. But by January 1942, there were already 2 to 3 daily bombings in Singapore, and the Japanese troops arrived in Singapore. Now, let's make a guess on how did the Japanese troops arrive in Singapore?
We'll take a vote. Maybe they used boats because the 2 battleships protecting Singapore had been sunk. Or maybe they walked on food. Or they used bicycles. What do you think? Do you think it's 1, 2, or 3? Well, the Japanese troops actually made their way down the Malay Peninsula on bicycles. Then on 8 February, they crossed the Johor Straits in boats, landed in Singapore. On 15 February 1942, the British surrendered after days of intense fighting.
他们投降的时候，我们都吓到。我们以为英军很厉害，可是那个时候我们每天都怕，心里想投降了就不用打仗了。
The British surrendered. They put up white flag to show that they lost. Popo's family was actually relieved, thinking that after the surrender, the fighting will stop. Did the British surrender because they did not care about us, Popo?
我觉得他们没有不管我们，他们有为人民着想。
Popo said that the British did think of the people even after they have surrendered.
他们把粮食窗口开了，就叫我们去拿食物。
Popo said that the British opened their stores for the people to take the food for free so that they could still have something to eat even after the British had surrendered. So Popo, what happened to your family after the British surrendered?
妹妹，你来讲。
Right after the Japanese arrived, all Chinese men between the ages of 18 and 50 were asked to report to various parts of Singapore for checks. This was known as Operation Sukching. Popo's mother's precious belonging was a sewing machine. She didn't know what was going to happen to her, so she handed it over to a Malay lady to keep. You see, Malays were not required to report for the inspection.
I know why the Japanese didn't like the Chinese. It was because when Japan were fighting China, many Singaporean Chinese had sent money over to support the Chinese soldiers in their fight against Japan. So Popo, what happened to your family after the Japanese came?
去到日军营，他们就全部的男生留下，妇女和孩子可以回家。可是我们都要打一个检的印。我的兄弟说，他们是农夫，日军就放他们走，我们都在等。我的邻居一直等，可是有些就再也没回来。
Popo's brothers and father survived the Sukching by claiming to be farmers, though they were not. They were sent home. Others, such as Popo's neighbors, were taken and never came back.
So Popo, were all the Japanese bad people?
我们住的地方有日军住在旁边，有时候他们会来叫我妈妈去拿剩下的食物。
So not all Japanese soldiers were bad people. There were some Japanese soldiers who lived nearby to Popo's house. They were kind to Popo's mother and would ask her to go and take some extra food back.
可是日军来了之后，我们买东西就要排队拿号码，拿了号码再排队买东西。
So you had to queue almost for everything. Queue for a number, then queue to buy. And you have a ration card, which tells you how much you can buy.
I remember Agong telling us about how food was scarce and you had to queue up to use this card to get your food, such as rice and salt. The portion given was based on the number of people in your family, and you would then use money to purchase. However, the portions started to get smaller and smaller. At first, each person could get up to 12 kg of rice a month. Towards the end of the Japanese occupation, it dropped to about 5 kg for men, 4 kg for women, and only 2.5 kg for children.
This is the money they used then. It's called the banana notes, and it's different from what we use today.
日本人印了太多香蕉钱，后来日本投降了，不值钱。日本又投降，前几天一粒鸡蛋卖100块。
Popo shared that just a few days before the Japanese surrendered, an egg cost $100. Gosh! Before the war, an egg cost just 3 cents. And even today, you can buy an egg for just 30 cents. Banana money was worth very little because during the Japanese occupation, the Japanese printed lots of banana money, and this money did not have the serial numbers at the back. As a result, the banana money value dropped.
So this tells us we can't be just printing lots and lots of paper and call it money. It will be worthless. Everyone has to work hard so that Singapore can produce more goods and services, and there is enough for everybody.
That is why Daddy and Mommy have to work, so there is good work done and real money earned. Is it hard to understand how it feels? Maybe you should experience it. Later you will get a ration card that looks like this and queue. You will queue and pay with your banana notes, then get your card stamp and you will receive a bag of rations. Make sure you follow the rules. The Japanese soldiers are watching you. Why? Why did the Japanese have to do this? Is it to make the people hungry?
In those times and now, Singapore survived on trade. During a war, businesses will have to stop. Without work, people will not have money to buy food. And Singapore did not grow lots of food. So, to prevent the prices from going up, the Japanese fixed the amount and made sure that people could only buy a certain quantity.
Popo, what if people needed more? Maybe they were sick and needed more of certain food.
黑市场，有些人知道打仗了，很多东西不容易买，所以有些人就收，然后再卖，很多钱。
Black market! I saw this in Ago's notes. There. Knowing that things would be in short supply, people would buy and then resell it at much higher prices.
跟现在不是一样吗？疫情发生的时候，大家都很怕，开始买的食物收起来。
Popo says it's very similar to the COVID-19 pandemic in 2020, where people got very worried and started to stock up on food items. Remember?
日战的时候不够吃，日本军就叫我们自己种食物吃。我的邻居就到义安城那个地方种番薯、木薯。日军也开发新农，叫人去开发地种食物，开发了1年多就和平。
Oh, I didn't know that. During the Japanese occupation, there wasn't enough food. The Japanese started a Grow More Food campaign. Do you know where Ngee City is? Back then, it wasn't a shopping mall. It was a gravesite.
Yeah, and Popo's friend actually went there to plant more crops like sweet potatoes and tapioca. The Japanese troops also sent people across the causeway to Johor to plant more crops. Luckily, the Japanese occupation ended a year later.
Timmy, you know Mommy always taught us not to fight. But do you think there are times that we need to fight?
Well, what do you think? Do you think we need to have an army to fight for our country? Well, if you think we need to, show me a pose like this. If you think we don't need an army, show me a pose like this. Alright, ready? So, show me a pose at a count of 3. Ready? 1, 2, 3. Pose! Ha!
So many of you think that we need an army, but I thought we were asked not to fight.
Yes, we shouldn't fight among ourselves. There was a time where Singaporeans fought Singaporeans because of racial feelings. This will hurt ourselves. Well, that's a story for another time. The debate about having an army is not to fight among ourselves, but to fight others when others attack us to protect ourselves.
Oh, that's right. Sometimes we fight not because we want to fight, not because we like, but we fight to protect what is important to us.
That's right. Family is important to me. Say, if an enemy were to come and hurt you, attack you, would you want me to fight to protect you?
Of course, Timmy. I want you to protect me.
Well, I hope so too. What if I don't know how to fight? Can I still protect you?
Timmy, can you learn to fight, but only fight when you have to?
Yes. When we have a good army, we can protect ourselves when we need to. We can protect you, Mommy, Daddy, Popo. When we have a good army, others will not dare to disturb us. And this is why we can enjoy the peace now. Ah Gong left us with a tin of stories from the past.
这里有一个盒，是我留给你们的。
Total defense!
Military defense is having a strong Singapore armed forces to protect our country against attacks. It also involves its citizens doing its part to support the military.
Civil defense provides the safety and basic needs of the whole community so that life may go on as normally as possible during emergencies.
Economic defense is the government, business, and industry organizing themselves to support Singapore's economy. People also need to work hard to help with Singapore's development.
Social defense is about people living and working in harmony and spending time on the interests of the nation and community.
Psychological defense is each person's commitment to and confidence in the nation's future.
不要忘记
Digital defense! Digital defense requires every individual as the first line of defense against threats from the digital domain. This is now yours.